Welcome to this week's technique tutorial. I'm talking squats. My top 3 tips in order to optimize your squats so that you can really feel those glutes, not just those quads, in order to help build more strength around your pelvis, to help with that load transfer when we're running and squatting and going up and down stairs, in order to help take some of that pain and load off the knees, which is often where a lot of the majority of discomfort and pain will happen when we don't have enough good strength further up at the top. So when we have a situation where our core and our glutes are not strong enough to sustain the loads of our running, another part of the body has to accept that load and the brunt of that force. And oftentimes, the next best thing in line is our knees. So when we have pain in our knees, and especially when we're running, I often then look to further up the chain, what's happening or not happening at the pelvis. So making sure that when we're utilizing our strength training and really working on those glute gains, are we actually using our glutes, or are we maintaining what we call a more quad dominant strategy when we squat, which means that we're using primarily this part of our body and often our calves instead of utilizing our booty and some of our quads to help us support in that process. So to clarify, there are some types of squats where they are more quad dominant and building up quad strength is still important. However, most of us are already quad dominant and really need to work on our hip dominant strategy, which is what we're going to work on today. So first thing that I often teach people is to work on your lean forward with your torso. So often I see people that when they squat more in a vertical position. When we're squatting in a more vertical position, which I would describe as like this, my body is staying and my torso is staying mostly vertical, which means that the muscles that are primarily working to keep me upright and move me down and up are my quads. However, in this motion, I'm not getting a lot of work in my seat. So in order to change the work from my quads to my glutes, I need to change the angle of my torso. So you may have heard the phrase hip hinge strategy. That hip hinge I've often thrown into some of my other workout videos as well, to think about sending that pelvis back as if you're sitting in a chair behind you in order to help optimize that hip hinge strategy, which allows us to access our hips when we squat. So in this position, yes, I'm still utilizing my quads, but they are secondary to the work that's happening back here. And these are much bigger muscles to be able to shock absorb through my running than my quads are for miles and miles over time. So often, when I'm teaching someone this strategy, it feels very foreign to them to lean forward, or they may feel like they're actually going to fall forward in that process, which is why a lot of people tend to avoid that lean unless they have someone teaching them that technique. So a couple things that can help you to feel more natural with that lean. Number 1, I like to take a weight. This can be a kettlebell or a dumbbell. I'm using about 10 pounds, somewhere between 10 to 15 I find to be most helpful for people. I'm gonna hold that weight behind me, and then as I squat, this weight helps me to counterbalance and sit back into my pelvis and keep the weight in my heels, which will allow me to then feel more glute activity in my seat. And then I use that to drive back up tall. So this is my first tip, is to use a weight back here to reteach your body to send your pelvis back behind you, because the lean forward of your torso is going to act like a counterbalance. And while it may feel like you're going to tip forward, you'll be surprised to learn that you won't. So the further back we can get that pelvis, the more of that lean forward that becomes available in order to optimize our squat and optimize that glute strategy. Number 2, another option is to use a chair or a piece of furniture that can kind of block your knees to help you send that pelvis back further behind you. So I like to have people kind of come up close to the piece of furniture. This can be an ottoman, a couch, basically just something that you can sit your feet a little bit underneath. And then again, I'm going to sit back. The chair blocks my knees and forces me to sit back into my hips. This is again going to help me find my glutes and not let me shift forward onto the ball of my foot, which makes it more of a quad dominant squat. So again, that piece of furniture gives me a guide to know when to sit my pelvis back. Also, sometimes when people squat, they have a little bit of a rotation, or they may not even notice that they shift more to one side. Especially when we've had knee pain, we'll often shift away from that knee. So the chair or the piece of furniture is a nice piece of feedback, because as I sit back down into my squat, my goal is to keep my knees both touching the chair. So if I start to rotate, one knee is gonna come off. And or as I sit down and come up, if I have a rotation, I'm gonna see that pretty quickly, because I'm gonna notice that my body wants to rotate off when I'm coming down or when I'm going back up. So the chair or the piece of furniture provides some really good feedback there. Once I've kind of worked on using the chair, using the weight with practice over a series of sessions, and now I can then come to a more freestanding practice of getting into that squat. At that point, then another way to up the ante in terms of workload is to take a resistance band, thread your legs through, place that band up above your knees, come into a stance that's about shoulder distance apart, and then same technique. You're gonna sit back, drive your knees out against that band, but still keeping the knees in line with the toes so they're not gonna over press out any wider than the feet. Hold that there, sit that pelvis back, and then you drive back up. So the band automatically helps me to engage into my glutes, because that band is helping my knees to track in line with my feet, which is important for our running, and also important because the glute is the primary muscle that's responsible for controlling that knee. So if I come forward here so you can see where I'm at, as I come down into my squat, if my knee is staying right over my toes there, then my glutes are engaged to keep that band from collapsing. However, if I start to get tired or my knee starts to drop in, then my glute is not helping to support that alignment of my knee, and that band will remind me, okay? So, to review, top 3 tips. Check in with your lean of your torso. We need that about 45-degree lean in order to access our hips. If we're staying more vertical with our torso as we squat, it's gonna stay most of the workload into our quads, okay? A way to help with that hip hinge strategy is to take a weight, throw it behind your pelvis, and practice sitting back into an imaginary chair behind you, so you can start to get that counterbalance movement more naturally. Another way to help with that practice is to use a piece of furniture to block your knees as you sit back into that squat and then stand back up. Once that starts to feel more natural, challenge that by stepping away from the chair and the other props. Do that in freestanding, and then you can start to add more resistance with a band, and then eventually utilizing, let's say, a goblet squat where you hold a weight in front, or dumbbells on the side, things like that, to now start to challenge that system even further. So I hope you guys found this helpful for utilizing more ways to find your glutes instead of just your quads during your squat. I'd love to hear how this was helpful, what tips you found to be most useful for changing up your squat so you can feel those glutes more effectively. So feel free to drop any comments, questions down below, and I'll be sure to reach out to you based on those comments. Take care, everybody.